The roads into Chernobyl had long been swallowed by weeds and silence, asphalt cracked and lifted by roots like broken bones. Abandoned cars rusting on the roadside, their windows blind with dust. For 20 years, the zone had been a place of whispers, a scar on the earth where nature seemed to crawl back not with beauty, but with grotesque patience. It was a place where silence felt heavy, as if the air itself remembered screams. And yet, people still lived there. They called them Samosuli, the stubborn ones who had refused to leave, or those who returned after the evacuation, too old to care or too tied to their soil to abandon it. They grew potatoes in poisoned ground, drank water from wells lined with decay, and lived among the ruins of a world abandoned. They told themselves the worst had already happened, but in truth, the worst had only been waiting. It began with the dogs. For years, packs of feral strays roamed the empty streets of Pripyat, their howls echoing against broken windows. They were lean but recognizable, shadows of pets once loved by families who fled. Then, slowly, the dogs began to change. Some grew too large, their legs knotted and twisted like roots, jaws warped into shapes that looked almost human when they snarled. Others dragged swollen bodies with too many ribs, too many eyes glinting in the dark. They prowled the schoolyards and apartment courtyards as if guarding the memories of the dead. Old Ivan, one of the settlers, was the first to notice. He lived alone in a house at the edge of the forest, a stubborn relic of a man whose skin was creased like the bark of the birch trees. One evening, he heard scratching on his door. Thinking it a fox or a stray, he opened it with a rifle in his hand. What crouched on his porch was no dog he knew. It had a body swollen like a tumor, its fur patchy and wet with sores, and where its mouth should have been, there was only a hole rimmed with yellow teeth, gnashing as if chewing air. It made no sound, no growl, no whine, just the wet clicking of teeth. When Ivan raised his rifle, it leapt. The neighbors found his house the next morning, the door hanging open, the walls streaked with something dark. Of Ivan, only his cap remained, lying in the mud. The Samosuli whispered after that. They whispered of curses, of the land growing restless, but most stayed, because where else was there to go? To leave was to die among strangers. To stay was to die among ghosts. As the months dragged into years, more creatures came. Boars with tusks that split their own jaws open, birds with wings so thin they dragged on the ground, feathers brittle like paper, cats with too many legs, and larger things that slithered in the rivers, surfacing only at night, their eyes glowing like lanterns in pairs, then in clusters. It was said one could hear them moving under the water at dusk, a sound like bones snapping over and over. By the 20th year, the zone was no longer simply abandoned. It was alive with things that should not exist. And the people learned to fight. The villagers carried axes, pitchforks, and old Soviet rifles left to rust in attics. They patrolled in groups at night, lighting fires at the crossroads to ward off the things that came out of the woods. Every family learned not to leave food scraps outside, for the mutants were drawn to the scent. Some built walls of tin and barbed wire around their cottages, though the stronger beasts could climb or burrow beneath. Children, those few who had been born in the zone, fragile and pale, were taught not fairy tales, but warnings. Never follow the voices you hear in the fields at dusk. Never approach the river at night. Never look an animal in the eyes if it has more than two. Still, the creatures came closer. One winter evening, in the village of Kapachi, the ground began to shake. At first, the villagers thought it was the wind rattling the hollow windows. Then they saw the earth itself moving near the playground, the sandpit collapsing inward. From the soil heaved up a thing that might have once been a cow. Its body was hairless, swollen, its udders rotted and hanging in strips, and its skull had split down the middle like a cracked melon, two long tongues writhing from within. It staggered toward the houses, blind but sniffing, its nostrils smoking with heat. The men of the village set it ablaze with kerosene, but as it burned, it screamed in a voice so human that several fled into the forest, unable to bear the sound. No one slept that night. The ruins of Pripyat became worse still. The city was not empty, though no one dared say it aloud. At night, lights flickered in the upper floors of apartment blocks, though no electricity ran through the wires. Shadows moved behind curtains where no humans lived. Some villagers swore they heard children laughing in the schoolyard, though the voices were warped, rising and falling like broken instruments. Once, a hunter claimed to have seen a figure on the Ferris wheel, tall, thin, its head tilted unnaturally to the side, watching him. He never went back. Those who entered the city too boldly rarely returned. The few that did came back pale, trembling, unable to speak of what they had seen. One woman clawed at her own eyes until she bled, whispering only, "They are still there, the ones who never left." Yet life continued, stubborn as the weeds. The Samosli grew their crops, patched their roofs, told stories by firelight to keep their minds from unraveling. They had lived through the explosion, through the soldiers who drove them out, through hunger and sickness. They told themselves they could live through this too. But the zone was patient, and it had begun to hunger. The turning point came in the spring of the 20th year. A group of hunters went missing in the Red Forest. When the villagers searched for them, they found only scraps, boots torn to pieces, rifles bent as if by giant hands, blood soaked into the moss. No bodies, only trails that led deeper into the woods where the trees themselves seemed twisted into cages. Something large had taken them. The fear spread like infection. Fires were lit at every crossroad, bells hung at doors to warn of intruders. The air was heavy with smoke and damp earth. The children no longer played outside. The elders spoke of packing what little they had and leaving at last, though they knew they would not survive long beyond the zone. Then, one night, the bells rang. It came from the forest, dragging itself on limbs that bent the wrong way. A beast taller than a man, its back bristling with spines of bone. Its face was not a face at all, but a raw wound stretched wide, teeth embedded directly into flesh. It moved with the jerky rhythm of something half dead, yet its strength was undeniable. It tore through fences, smashed through doors. The villagers fired rifles until the barrels glowed, but the bullets only slowed it. It killed 3 before they managed to drive it into the river, where it vanished beneath the black water. After that, no one doubted. The zone was birthing monsters now, things that had never walked the earth before. Life became a war. The Samosli hunted not only for food, but for survival, venturing into ruins to scavenge ammunition, fuel, anything to fight back. They set traps in the forests, spiked pits, snares of barbed wire. Some spoke of strange alliances. One old man claimed he fed a pack of 3-headed dogs each night, and in return they guarded his cottage. No one dared question him, for his land remained untouched while others bled. But the cost was heavy. Children sickened, elders disappeared,
At night, screams echoed across the empty fields, some human, some not. The villagers no longer knew where the line between man and beast truly lay. 20 years after the explosion, Chernobyl had become something new, not a place of death, but a place of transformation. The radiation had written its own scripture into the flesh of animals, into the soil, into the bones of those who remained. The zone was not dying, it was evolving. And those who lived within it understood a terrible truth. They were evolving too. Some noticed it in small ways, the way wounds healed too quickly, the way hunger gnawed less than it once had. Others in darker ways. Dreams of voices calling from the reactor, blood that glowed faintly in the moonlight.